So welcome. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living in Ajijic, Mexico. In case you wondered where you were. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and wonder the same thing. We're going to have another song and then an opening meditation by Maureen Jones, Reverend Maureen.
God is, I am right here, right now.
Right here and right now is the time in our Sunday celebration when we pause to turn within. Beginning with a deep inhalation, I invite you to breathe in and exhaling, consciously connect with that infinite flow that is within each of us, flowing love, flowing life, flowing light, that oneness that knows that everything is good. And as we move higher and deeper into this space of clear knowing, connecting with the divine that is everywhere, all-knowing, all-present, all-loving. We know, and we know that we know. We know that all appearance in this outer world is just that, it's appearance. And when we withdraw our attention from the dark, from the shadows, from the sad, and go within, we are assured, and we know with every whit of our being that all is well, that the truth is perfection everywhere now. Because God is everywhere, and there is no place that can be outside of the divine. And so that place in which we find ourselves is always clearly one with love, one with light, one with the divine. As close as our breath. And in that clear knowing that all is well, I invite you to take a breath of that energy that surrounds us. Breathe in and out. And come into this time and place to celebrate this beautiful life that we live in with an openness of mind and heart to receive the message, the gifts of the stages of our consciousness. And so it is.
So I chose a topic today that is not exactly a mainstream concern or thought in science of mind per se. So if you're expecting to be, quote, taught science of mind, we have classes. And we will do that too. It's not like there's an either or, but my tendency is to want to express my experience, strength, and hope. And what I'm working on spiritually, not what I think I learned 20 years ago that I think is really valuable that somebody else ought to learn. if you want to do that, go have my life 20 years ago. So the topic is our stages of life and how that is transmitted, influenced, and intertwines with states of consciousness. And I will begin by explaining my concept of stages of life, then a little bit about consciousness in those stages of life, and then how science of mind, or the spirituality that we practice at the center, some of us, some of the time, interact with that. So it shouldn't take more than 3 hours. And if you want to watch the football game, just go ahead and enjoy that while you're listening to this. It'll work, it'll be fine. Stages of life. What are the stages of life? Well, I like to think of them, and think of many things, in blocks of 4. And it most closely corresponds, in my mind, to the seasons. Spring, winter, autumn, spring, summer. I get confused because we're here. And one of the beauties of being in Mexico is that any of these preconceptions don't apply. So pretty much live outside of this, but yes, we have spring. I've got a little feedback from my wife's listening to it on an iPad. Spring, summer, fall, winter. And that roughly corresponds to ages. So when I was 15, I was pretty sure I was about ready to become an adult. So we start out with youth and adults. And then some people experience middle age, and some of us become aged. Now at 15, I thought I had moved from being a youth to being an adult, and I thought that middle age was probably around 30. You can't trust anybody over 30. And anybody over 45 was old. So it's kind of relative, right? Now, as an adult, I started to see that really adulthood maybe began at 20, and before that I was a kid, and that probably at 40 I might be considering middle age, and that meant probably 60 would be old age. Now, when I moved down here 10 years ago, my perspective had changed some, and I was thinking that maybe when I looked at my youth, I was pretty much a kid till I was 25. It was at 25 that I became married, and shortly after that had kids, and I went from being an intern resident fellow to being, quote, a real doctor practicing. So I thought that was kind of adulthood. And corresponding to that, middle age would be around 50, and that would continue, and then maybe old age would happen at 75. That's sort of what I've been working under. However, I've had reports from people who are in their 80s, and they said, well, they're not old yet. And I'm almost 75, and I'm feeling pretty young, actually. So I may have to change this, but it's an approximation. Now, what are the characteristics of each of these stages? Well, youth is mainly about learning. And in fact, there's a lot of learning. Think of everything from learning language to how to behave and how to fit into a family, and then how to have friends and how to fit in with friends, and how to start planning and learning in the sense of schoolwork. There's tons of learning. It's not that there isn't learning in every other stage, but boy, that's what being under 25 is about, or at least for sure in my life. I learned a lot. Adulthood is generally about job and a family. From 25 to 50, roughly, it's kind of working, doing things, and taking care of people. At 50, most of us, some of us have several of them, and some begin earlier than that, start to have, quote, midlife crises. And we start to say, well, what are we here for really? And what's this all about? And is this all? Those kinds of questions. And we become more directed towards the community. We've sort of had our job and been focused at family, but then often our involvement is more outside of ourselves. And then at 75, I don't know, I haven't decided what that's about, but I see it as being more, letting go of a lot of things. I've already had that experience to some degree, and I'm also being ready, really ready to die, because we do die at some point, and it would be nice to be prepared, have a sense of readiness as opposed to a sense of dread. So that's the four stages of life as I see it, and for this purpose. The other thing that I've been struck by is a teaching that I learned through Dr. Beckwith. Pretty direct. I actually took a class in it from him. I've been exposed to a few of the greats. And that was stages of consciousness. And they go very simply. First of all, it's to me, and then it's by me, then it's through me, and then it's as me. Now, explaining what that's about. Well, and a little bit how I see it in terms of our age stages. As a kid, although we characterize it in our minds as this fun, playing all the time, no cares, no concerns kind of period, it's actually a time when there's a lot of fear. Will I survive? A baby has that, my God, are they going to feed me? And complaints if it seems like they might not. And with each stage, will I fit in? Will they accept me? Am I loved at home? Do I belong in my family? Do I have friends? Do they care about me? And when the hormones kicked in, am I capable of attracting and being with somebody in an intimate way? And all these things are very fear-provoking. At least those parts that I remember seem to be for me, and as I saw my own children go through these stages, I sensed that about them. So the fear is kind of a signal to me. It's like I am subject to whether my parents care or whether they're, under the influence of drugs and alcohol or of their concerns or whatever. And as long as I am in that stage, I don't generally really have a spirituality as such. My higher power is really my parents or my teachers or maybe the group at school, the kids. But it's not generally, and again, there are some really amazing exceptions, but it's really not anything what most of us would call a higher power, or the divine. And if there is, and this is the other way of looking at these four stages, is not just in the individual evolution, but in the evolution of humankind, a lot of humankind history has been an experience of it's happening to me, and I need something, and it seems like there's something that will come and save me. And there are a lot of religions built around being saved. That somehow I am one at great risk, and I'm suffering a lot. I must have done something wrong. I need to be pardoned, and my situation is really bad. I can't do anything about it. God help me, literally. And the saying is that there are no atheists in the trenches. So when there's that survival, oh my, there's a tendency to reach for the God unknown to save me. Adulthood comes. What is it about? It's about really control. It's taking charge of your life. If I want it, I've got to do it. What I have is what I get. And I need to get it in order to have it. It is stepping forward and accepting responsibility in my life. So it's by me. I create my life. Now the prayer in that state of mind is again for help, but not to change the circumstances out there as much, although maybe some of that. I could use some help in order to get what I want, but it's to be empowered in the sense that I can have that I can get what I want by being energized by this greater force of the universe. So it's kind of a help, but it's in a little different way from the help of the to me. It's that I can do it if I just have a boost or a little good luck. The third stage, and I see it as being associated in many ways with that middle age period, is through me. And it has several little parts to it. One is that in that middle age period, there's kind of a realization that I really am beyond my prime. For most women, it means I'm not going to have any more babies. And for everybody, it means, men or women, that probably my creative period, when I'm going to have the Einsteinian inspirations of many of the great creations and great art and great athletic events and great people who are great musicians, generally, not always, but generally started and were well into their success and expression by the time they were 50. So it's kind of that realization, you know what? There's a whole lot of things that I might have been. I could have been a contender, but that ain't going to happen. So there's a kind of maybe a disappointment or a feeling that life left me behind. But there's accompanying that feeling is the realization that I know some things. And not only that, I am aware of how to really work with people in a way to support them. So much of the middle-age work activity in the world is mentoring, teaching, supporting, providing people younger, and sometimes people of all age, not really an age-dependent thing, but allowing them and encouraging them, and at times instructing whatever they need, but to help them move forward. And not only that, it gets out of my little me, myself, and I world of family and work, where there's a limited number of intimate people, and some people don't have anybody they're very intimate with, and some people naturally tend to have a bigger circle. But in this period, that circle grows. That sense that we are all brothers and sisters. That it isn't just the people in my family, the people in my work or in my town, or that go to my church, or that look like me, that are my brothers and sisters, but really everyone is. And in fact, as creatures of the earth, we're related to all creatures. And that sense of relatedness is an expansion that is natural to that time of life. And there's still a lot of productivity, there's activity, there's contribution, but it's done with a different energy. So that's through me, the sense that it's not I that doeth the work, it's the Father that doeth the work, to quote the Bible and have a different sense of the divine than some of us would share as gendered, but that the infinite, the universe, love, life flowing through me is what allows me to be fully alive in this moment. Now, the fourth stage, as me, is not, I'm pretty familiar with the other three stages. It's one that it's sort of like yes and really. So I don't wish to pretend to say what that's really like. But I certainly have seen people that just seem in their presence whether they're talking or not, whether they're doing something or not, whether that I feel a sense of wow, this person's, there's something here. Now, obviously, it takes something. I have to have some receptor to connect with that, but it's happened several times, and I've heard it from a lot of people. I think the Hindu expression is darshan, that somehow when you're in the presence of that person, you kind of have that feeling of all of a sudden being at a different level. So I kind of imagine, and the one time when it was very striking was when I was on a trip with a pilgrimage thing that is a story in and of itself, but as part of the termination, I ended up in Japan in a Buddhist temple, and they were giving in, and it was at their housing part, and they were having a feast, dinner for the people who were participating in this pilgrimage, and they had some visiting people that were there as well. And there was this one guy who stood up, very robed and looked convincingly Buddhist, but he started talking, and it was like, that isn't a usual after dinner talk, what he's saying and how he is. And I just sort of said, who is that man? Which is another biblical quote. For those of you who think we're not Bible oriented, well, we're not, but sometimes I find them strikingly appropriate. So I asked, who was that guy? And it turned out that he was the head of, and I don't know what their title is, but the head of Buddhism in Cambodia. So he was, quote, a somebody in the sense of kind of worldly hierarchies, but he was definitely a somebody from my experience. So how do we use these vague descriptions, which may not be real, if they seem to make sense to you and apply in your life? Great. How I use them is to get at the emotions. The emotions, from my perspective, point to what I'm really believing. And it's only when I know what I'm really believing that I can pray, in the sense that we talk about prayer, in such a way that I change my belief. I let go of an old belief and I grab onto a new one. It's not that there aren't conscious beliefs that I might have, that I might go through a book course and logic and come to a different conclusion. That might change my life too, but it's these different beliefs that I don't think I'm thinking. They aren't thoughts as beliefs, but they are how I'm actually, what my life is expressing as, and I can know those by my feelings. So fear, when I am afraid, and I can usually tell when I'm afraid. There was a time in my life when I was so shut down emotionally, what at that time they called flat-lined, that I couldn't feel much of anything. I was just sort of, that was scary. In retrospect, at the time it wasn't scary because I didn't know enough to be scared. It wasn't connected enough to be scared. But after I kind of got out of it, it was like, holy fuck. That's as closer to death than the times that I've nearly had physical things that were close to death. So fear is like a signal. What am I believing? In the case of a child, a baby, it's that the belief is that they might not feed me. They might not love me. They may not hold me. They might not embrace me. I might not be safe. I might not belong. That fear is that I'm not safe. Who I am is not valuable enough to be safe, and obviously an infant at 3 months doesn't have those thoughts, but that's the feeling of fear that at least I experience in some way or another all the time when I've had fear that was related to that I am not safe, I am not secure. So the prayer focuses around the knowing that I am safe and secure, that I am cared for. When I know that I'm afraid, that's the greater truth that I know for myself. When I experience somebody as being afraid, whether they are aware of it or not, because as I mentioned, there was definitely times in my life when I was terrified and I definitely didn't know I was afraid, I will hold the knowing, which they may not be able to hear at all. But the greater truth is that they are really safe, that life is sacred, their life is sacred, and that all is well with them, even though their circumstances and this belief that they're not okay at all makes their experience of life that is very uncomfortable, painful. Now, there are similar types of things with each age. So, the goal of the adult, again, not all adults, not all the time, but as I see it, my adultness was a belief that I need to be in control. I needed to be in control. I needed to be able to take care of these people, whether it was my work as a doctor or my role as a father or my role as a husband, and to a degree with my friends, which I didn't have many, but my circle was rather small at that time, but still, it was a feeling that, and in fact, I had to be in control of myself, because it's up to me. I make my life happen. The fear that makes that existence, that state problematic, the underlying fear is that I really am not that strong. I know I'm really not in control. And my not being in control is a big problem. In fact, the whole world, all of life, from my perspective, depends upon it. Knowing that as a thought is not necessarily very helpful, because it's fairly obvious to most people that as self-reliant and independent as I may have been, there was a whole lot of stuff that I did not and do not have control over. To allow myself to know that I, in fact, am not in control. That my job is purely to show up and be present and do what I can in each moment. Once I know that, not just as a thought, but that the belief that I need to be in control is a false belief that will not support me, is impossible, and puts me in a state of dis-ease. I'm not at ease with that. That I can be who I can be by being in a state of ease, willing to do what I can in each moment, to do that which is present before me. And I don't have to be in control. Now, at that time, I experienced it as, even though I didn't philosophically think of it that way, but as some essence outside of me that in some sense was supporting me. Because I felt the feeling was that it's about me, by me. And so it wasn't that I was resistant or stupid. I might have been those, but the fact was that in a by me state of consciousness, I can't quite, people can talk about as me or through me, but it didn't make any sense. It made sense, but I couldn't apply it as such. So in middle age, I think what was a striking feeling was a sense of not being of any purpose, not being useful, not being meaningful. It was a feeling of, boy, I've done all that, and it felt good in some ways, and it's not that I didn't help people, and wasn't that I wasn't a good father, and I wasn't better. She might be listening. I guess I was an okay husband. It's not that I was a star, but I was pretty good. And what more can you be than pretty good, really? But there was a feeling of somehow, what else? What else? And a sense that although I was proud of what I had done, in a sense of saying, yep, that was not bad, I wanted to experience something more. And so the prayer changed. The prayer changed to be, how can I serve? I mean, what is mine to do, and what can I do? And what needs to be done? It seems like when things happen, it's that there's a need, and I have the ability, urge, inclination, and when those two connect, stuff tends to happen. Sometimes there are things that I see a need, huge, that I'm really not suited. Maybe not yet, maybe someday. And other times I feel like, boy, I've got really something right there. And it's like, well, but how does that connect with the world, with other people? How do I help them? How does it influence, make their lives better? So the prayer part is finding my way, finding what I am here to do, and being open to that and having that revealed. It appears, from looking from, I hope, a distance, that at older age, that it's about releasing. Now, some of releasing I've experienced, wow, my daughter really knows more about taking care of her life than I did. I sometimes have opinions about what she's doing, and sometimes I'll even find it convenient or appropriate to share them with her, but I have kind of a little different perspective. Why have you thought of that, or whatever? But now, rarely. In fact, I often ask her, quote, advice, her perspective. Here's kind of what I'm dealing with. What do you think? Acknowledging and allowing her participation in my life is another way to empower her. As long as I try to maintain, or even if I succeed, or especially if I succeed in being, well, now, Alexa, you got to be like this, and that somehow if you aren't okay, message from Dad, which she may or may not be susceptible to, but if she is susceptible to, that doesn't support her. Being willing to support her in who she is, and to embrace it, and to give her an attagirl, and when I see that she's suffering in some way or another, to be present with her, not as a problem solver, which I love to do, but as a caring person that wants the best for her and can be present with her. That's a whole different experience. And that's what it seems like. Releasing, participating, but participating as an elder is more being present, generally, quote, encouraging, but caring without trying to solve or fix or lead or direct or even, maybe even support. That's what I imagine. Knowing that, as I step into each of those ages and situations, then I can say, what am I becoming? And what would I like to express as? How would I like to express that would be fuller and richer? And that's what we pray for. That's what I pray for, at least. And in the same way, I can support other people. Now, what I've realized, partly as I've had this kind of what's going to happen when I am older and what would happen if I actually got old, is the realization that I am all those stages at the same time. Unlike, I guess, some computers that only work on one operating system, my sense of myself is that I'm operating on all four of those operating systems. That there's still a fearful, we call it the inner child part of me, that's very much alive. There's still the adult, the would-be adult, that's trying to be, grab the ring, or that's still trying to quote, make things happen, has that urge. There is definitely the mature person who is looking for how best to serve, because that's when I feel really fulfilled and alive, and it seems to be what I may have some qualities to still do, and it's clear that I belong in that category of releasing, really releasing, letting go, feeling some relief. There is the different things that I have assumed, allowed myself to believe, and roles that I played are very burdensome. I mean, there's a lot of weight. If you need to save the world or bring peace to mankind, or whatever the grandiosity that might have been at that particular time, that's a great relief to let go of. So my invitation is, hopefully this has given you some other thoughts about how to think about whatever you're doing and whoever you are and wherever you are. And if you are so interested, to stay for our little discussion period afterwards. It won't be long, because there is, after all, a Super Bowl coming on in 45 minutes, but who's counting? And we do have prayer practitioners who, if you would like prayer, you say, gee, I really, what you said about that or this, or just my life in general, I'm having a lot of stuff and I don't even know where to start, kind of thing. And there are at least some that are willing to participate in that. We have Zoom Room, and we think we can make it happen. If you feel the urge for prayer, send a note to me or to everyone, and we will assign you to someone, assuming that we can master that technology. That's partially a hope. We haven't had that. We haven't done that yet, but we think we know how to do that. So with that, I think it's time to give you a break and invite she's been our treasurer. She's one of our practitioners, and I guess the one that's been associated with the center probably the longest. But in any case, Daisy Beth is going to guide us through a little thing of our offering ceremony.
Good afternoon. Sharing. Sharing is one of the great imperatives of all the religions. The Bible says, give 10% of your income. Islam asks for 2% of your net worth each year. And Buddhism reminds us, if we fail to look after others when they need help, who will look after us? And we know how good it feels to share. Here at the CSL, we're considering how we can support Lakeside. Tim mentioned it earlier. It's been difficult locally with job instability during this pandemic, never knowing whether you have a job from week to week, never knowing from day to day what the family income will be, what will be available to eat. One-parent families, we have lots of them. We have poor indigenous areas here in Mexico, and so many needy. For me, the biggest difficulty has been deciding who to support and how much. One of our local charities that addresses food needs is in the Food Bank Lakeside, which works with a lot of integrity out of San Juan Cosola. Last month, it gave food to 723 families locally. Our thought at this time of increased insecurity here in Lakeside and need is to allocate 1/3 of our CSL income to the local food bank we're still discussing. The local food bank, which so very frugally uses its resources for the community. Of course, we at CSL Chapala have money needs as well. We're taping this and it costs money. We've been building a new website that costs money, and we have our ongoing needs as well. A really good Zoom meeting, once again, costs money, as do our weekly mailings. If you have other thoughts, please address them to Tim's email, and we'll consider each one of them. Your generous donations can come to us through the donation button at the top of our website. This is my virtual basket that I'm passing around. The donation button at the top of our website at cslchapala.com. Each one of the donations is greatly appreciated. We use them and share them, knowing the vast oneness of universal abundance in each of our lives. Generosity and overflowing abundance pouring out in, through, and as each one of us. Your gift is the outpouring of universal love circulating. Please join us in supporting CSL Chapala and the Food Bank Lakeside. Thank you.
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio dos luceros que cuando los abro.
Please join me in the closing prayer. Mother, Father God, we are so grateful for this time together. In high consciousness with you, open-minded, guided by your clarity, your wisdom, and the truth speaking of Reverend Tim. And so we name and claim that we go through each stage, each season of our life, gathering the wisdom and the knowledge, and we shine through each of them. We share your love, your light, every day in every way. And we say thank you, thank you, thank you for the seasons, for the reasons, for the wise wisdom. In great gratitude, I release this and say, and so it is. Amen.
Amen.